Welcome to Into the Schneiderverse. This is a series we'll be doing where we watch the shows Dan Schneider created and produced throughout his time at Nickelodeon. Dan Schneider was a very prolific figure in children's entertainment from the late 1990s to the early 2000s on the channel Nickelodeon. He's created some classic shows that many people around my age grew up with, like The Amanda Bynes Show, Drake and Josh, Zoey 101, iCarly, and more. However, Dan Schneider was recently let go of Nickelodeon due to the declining viewership of his newer shows, which I've actually seen a couple episodes of and can say wholeheartedly that they are not very good.
I've never heard of that. And my dad's a neurosurgeon.
There are a lot of theories regarding Dan Schneider and his behavior towards the many actors and actresses on his show, and while that could be an interesting thing to go over, we'll just be discussing the quality of the various shows we watch, and if anything creepy is done on the show, we will bring it up. For this episode, we'll be revisiting my personal favorite Dan Schneider show, Zoey 101. Zoey 101 holds a special place in my heart. I really believe that it'll be the best Dan Schneider show on this list for a few reasons. The main reason being the absence of the laugh track. Laugh tracks in shows are terrible. I genuinely have no idea why they put artificial laughter into a series besides covering for poor writing.
Nothing makes beer taste better than cool, clear Rocky Mountains spring water. Where are the Rocky Mountains anyway?
Philadelphia.
The location of the show is another thing. It's set at a beautiful boarding school that I always wanted to go to when I was younger. Lastly, as far as I can remember, I really like the characters throughout the show, so I'm excited to see if I'll stick with them after all these years. The way we'll be structuring this series is simple. We will watch all episodes and specials of whatever show we're currently on, and we will be reviewing each season of said show. We will go over what it is we liked about the season, what we didn't like, and give the season a score out of 10 based on the scores we gave each episode in the season. So if the average episode score of a season is a 7, we give the season a 7 out of 10. This is just so we can gauge where we rank the various shows against each other eventually. A great thing about Zoey 101 in particular is the fact that only one of us watched it when we were younger, so we're able to review the show from two different perspectives rather than mine, which is being viewed with rose-tinted glasses. Let's begin our journey at PCA Academy.
Like, one time, I tried to write sassafras. I wrote lalafrau.
Immediately, I felt nostalgic. Hearing that intro again after all these years made me a little giddy, not gonna lie. Seeing these characters again invoked a strong feeling within me. I don't mean to sound dramatic, but it kind of felt like seeing old friends again after many years apart. Another thing I immediately realized is just how different the characters looked. When I was younger, the students at PCA looked so much older considering I was like 6 at the time. But after watching the first season, they looked exactly how we looked at 14. The fashion in this show is so jarring because I remember dressing the way these characters dressed when I was younger. The 2000s wasn't a great time for fashion, but at least there was a colorful variety. The first season mainly revolves around Zoey becoming acquainted with the new boarding school she's attending, PCA. PCA used to be an all-boys school, however they decided on letting girls in starting the year Zoey joined. You can clearly tell that you have to be a product of some rich parents to attend this place because it's the best looking school I've ever seen. The campus is both a middle school and a high school. This campus is actually a college known as Pepperdine University, which is a much worse name than Pacific Coast Academy. It's right by the beach and has a really stunning view no matter where they decide to shoot a scene. That's another thing I really like about this show. The scene locations are very diverse considering they're able to shoot all throughout the campus. It feels like they use this to their advantage throughout the show, as a lot of exterior shots are done in different locations. This makes the show more entertaining in my opinion, as it feels like the next scene could be somewhere completely new that we haven't seen yet. This is something Schneider's other shows don't really have, as many of them are filmed on a much smaller scale, so you'll be seeing the same static environments a lot more often than in Zoey 101. The first season of Zoey 101 is alright. Nothing really stands out about this season besides the campus. Many of the scenes are shot very basically, which isn't a bad thing, but it makes many of the scenes pretty boring to look at. There are exceptions like the first episode where the basketball game was filmed interestingly enough. This weird slow-mo effect was a very jarring reminder of how early 2000s shows were filmed. Over the course of the season, we were introduced to the main cast of the show. There's Zoey, Nicole, Dana, Quinn, Chase, Michael, Logan, and Dustin. The cast is full of different types of personalities, except Dana, which we'll get to in a second. Zoey's the lead of the show. She is level-headed, nice, and an okay leading role. Nicole is a pretty ditzy character. She's very book-smart but pretty dumb when it comes to everything else. She's also boy-crazy as well, whatever the hell that means. Dana is probably the blandest character here. She's very rude and doesn't ever get an opportunity to show a different side to her. There's really not much to say about her. She wasn't very well written and she seemed miserable to be around. Quinn is a side character who is incredibly smart and creates many weird inventions. She's very strange and nearly every B-plot revolves around her, which can be really frustrating, because as she gets wrapped up in more situations, you realize she's just a straight psychopath. Michael is a very fun and goofy character. He brings some much needed charisma to the friend group and is always a joy to have on screen. Logan is a selfish, entitled rich kid whose father is a movie producer. He's a prick, but a somewhat likable one. He is definitely a future product of nepotism. Dustin is Zoey's little brother who's been going to PCA for a few years before Zoey's arrival. And Chase is by far the best character on the show. He's given a good amount of character growth and is actually a pretty great actor. We really enjoyed his presence on the show. This season feels very safe. Nothing too exciting happens most of the time, and the plots can be pretty mundane. The B-plots are very similar, which can be really annoying because they always seem to revolve around Quinn and her inventions, which is fine. But when nearly every B-plot is about her and some whack invention, it can become seriously grating. Quinn is an interesting character, but in small doses. She's pretty strange and they really play into that this season.
Check this shit.
However, as the show moves forward, her character becomes much more well written. Most of the main plots in the first season are decent, but they never reach beyond being pretty passable at best, besides a few episodes. The better episodes end up being JetX, Little Beach Party, and Disc Golf. JetX revolved around the boys and the girls trying to create a commercial for a company selling these scooters called JetXs, and if they win, they get a free JetX. The premise was interesting and the overall outcome was pretty nice. Little Beach Party was about the group missing the bus that was headed to the beach after the semester finals, and then taking a taxi which took them to a completely different beach. There they made the best of their situation before finally being able to call a teacher to take them back to campus. This episode was fun, and seeing them make the most out of a shitty situation was great. It was a pretty great way to end the season overall. The final episode that ended up being the best out of all of them was the disc golf episode. This episode was pretty entertaining from start to finish. It revolved around the gang trying to get out of gym class by creating a disc golf team. When the gym teacher learns that the gang needs to actually compete and win against another school in a match in order to actually get out of gym class, the gang decides to find a random school to compete against. It turns out the school they chose ended up being a juvenile detention center. This episode was made 10 times more entertaining with the addition of the gym teacher. He's a bumbling idiot, but he was genuinely funny, and it's a shame that he was never in any of the other episodes.
Official petition to make disc golf a certified sport.
These episodes stood above the others because of how entertaining they were. A majority of the season was either mediocre or just okay, but these episodes stood above the rest. There was only one episode in which we really didn't like, and that was Prank Week. Prank Week is about the girls at PCA being pranked by the guys. It's apparently a PCA tradition to prank the new arrivals at the school. This causes the girls to retaliate and prank the boys back. This backfires and almost causes the girls to be expelled entirely. This episode was really boring. It felt dull and lifeless and was a major slog to get through. Of all the episodes in season 1, Prank Week was definitely the worst. While there weren't too many great episodes, there were some pretty interesting moments throughout the season. The best one has to go to when Zoey and Chase had a pretty great conversation near a pond with some ducks. This conversation was in the school dance episode after Zoey finds out about how Chase rigged his questionnaire to be paired up with Zoey. This conversation was pretty sweet and shows that the showrunners actually want some form of character growth on the show, which is very nice. Overall, we gave this season 6 grapes out of 10.
We'll be right back. On Nick.
This is a girl. Now, I know that might confuse you since you've probably never been this close to one.
Season 2 is a step up from Season 1 in a few ways. The first thing you'll notice is how the cast all got a foot taller between seasons. Secondly, the writing improved more this season along with the acting. One of the major changes to this season is the fact that Dana is no longer in the show. There are a few theories as to why she isn't in the show anymore, with the biggest one being that the showrunners thought she looked too old to play the part of a high schooler, which is kind of fucked up considering she was like literally 14 or some shit. They explained that Dana started doing some foreign exchange thing in France and then they literally never mention her again.
Retire!
Dana's replacement ends up being a character named Lola who is played by Victoria Justice, who also ends up in another Dan Schneider show, Victorious. I think Lola is an improvement from Dana, but Lola's character isn't too much better. She's pretty conceited and a little rude. She definitely has more personality than Dana, but she still isn't someone that is enjoyable to watch. One of the larger complaints we have in season 1 is the pretty boring cinematography. The first season has so many static shots. Luckily, the second season decides to try and do some cool things with the camera, especially in the episode Quinn's Alpaca. It's not Christopher Nolan level, but for a kid show on Nick, it's pretty good. Overall, this season was much more entertaining. A majority of the episodes ranked above a 7 out of 10, with only one episode ranking a 5 out of 10, which was the Haunted House episode. There wasn't anything really interesting about this episode, and it was mainly carried by Michael, who was being chased by French people who thought he was injured due to his Halloween costume. This episode tried to be a little freaky, but I think the scariest thing about this is the fact that Michael's actor is an NFT bro now. As for the better episodes, there were quite a few. Election was an entertaining episode revolving around Chase and Zoey competing in a student body president election, which ends up hurting their friendship. Broadcast Views was a fun episode where Logan and Zoey end up having their own TV show called He Says, She Says, where the two bicker about certain topics, which unintentionally reminds us of every major news network. People Auction is a very interesting episode revolving around Kazu, who owns Sushi Rocks, having his sushi restaurant burnt down, and the gang trying to come up with a way to raise money to rebuild Sushi Rocks. This episode is entertaining, but the title and the way they go about raising money is a little questionable. Finally, the season finale, Spring Breakup, is the first TV special of the show. This episode is fantastic overall, with a fun premise, interesting conflicts, and an ending that leaves you pretty peeved at what happens. It's a very fun episode overall and a great season finale, besides the annoying amount of screaming the girls would do as they ran between objectives and the challenge.
Amy
This problem only gets worse next season. I didn't mention it, but there's a fantastic scene where Chase is about to watch a DVD Zoey taped about her time at PCA to put into a time capsule, and he wants to know if Zoey mentions how she views him. Right before he's about to see what Zoey says, he asks Michael this. Overall, Season 2 was a nice improvement to Season 1's otherwise mediocre quality. The writing is improved and the showrunners decided to try out new things that help make the show more entertaining. We gave the season 7 Techmates out of 10. This video is sponsored by you, potentially. If you didn't know, we made a Patreon a little while ago. If you'd like to support the channel and see us grow, consider throwing a bone our way. But if not, that's fine. The comments and likes we get from you all are enough support, and we really appreciate all of it. Thanks for being awesome. Now what the hell were we talking about?
Hello. Hi.
Season 3 adds to the absence of characters we saw last season with Dana. This time, Nicole is no longer in the show.
Retire!
There are also many reasons as to why this came about, with the biggest one being that Nicole's actress would constantly fight with Zoe's actress. There's a lot more about this feud between these two that could become a massively long video in itself, so just know that she is no longer in the show from here on out. Nicole isn't replaced by a new addition to the cast, but rather is replaced by making Quinn a part of the trio. Quinn was always a part of the main cast, but this time she is much more a part of the group. It also helps that because of this change, Quinn is given a lot more interesting development instead of just being the weirdo of the group. Also, there was another massive change that occurred that we didn't realize until we stumbled across it researching the production of the show. That is, the campus they shot on has been changed. Originally, Pepperdine University was the filming location for the show. However, it became much more difficult to shoot there as the college gave them pretty limited space to film scenes. They changed the location to Mann Biomedical Park in Santa Clarita Valley. They did a great job at keeping the original feeling of PCA the same because we didn't notice it at all. The one thing that would probably give it away though is this weird green screen that they would use when they would have lunch together. This season you could feel the writers readjust their style in order to deal with the fact that characters kept leaving the show, which led to the rise of other characters like Mark and Stacy. Mark isn't a bad character, but he's just kinda there. He's emotionless, so it's really hard to care about him. Stacy is really just there to be the butt of a joke. She's memorable, but not in a great way. Every time she's on screen, she just gets shit on by other characters constantly.
Someone would kiss me someday. I'm out.
One of the facets from kids shows around this time was weird gross out humor, usually involving food and vomit. This wasn't really a big thing in the previous 2 seasons, but it became a much more apparent thing this season, especially because of Coco.
Oh God, what is that?
I don't know if kids actually find this shit funny, it's just kind of repulsive. Even when I was younger, I never understood the appeal of these kinds of jokes and scenes. There's a food fight sequence that made us both grossed out, and we realized that so many shows around this time seem to have scenes like this for whatever reason. This season is absolutely the peak of the series. There are a lot more episodes this season with a total of 23. The quality of these episodes vary, but overall, we really enjoyed this season. There are a lot of great episodes to talk about, but first, let's mention the worst decision we both agreed made certain episodes this season unbearable to watch: the addition of Coco. Coco was the girls' dorm advisor. She made brief appearances in the first 2 seasons as just a somewhat strange dorm advisor. However, this season, she plays a much more prominent role, with some episodes revolving entirely around her. Every episode where Coco plays a major role is awful to watch. She is very gross, her voice is grating to the ears, and her character really sucks. We had no sympathy for her and we wish she wasn't in the show at all. Her presence on the show dropped the overall season rank. I understand the writers were trying to add some new scenarios to put the characters in, but this was an awful way of going about it. Another thing about this season is the insane amount of screaming, especially from Lola's part. We would have to either skip through the episode or pull out our headphones because it is genuinely ear-shattering. When I was younger, this never bothered me, but rewatching the show, it only made me hate Lola's character more. There's even an episode where she's practicing for an audition where she has to give an authentic scream. The writers really love that bit. Besides those hiccups, the season's pretty great. The first 2 episodes of the season revolve around Chase getting a girlfriend over the summer. She attends PCA now, and on the surface, she seems like a cool person, until you realize that she wants Chase to not be friends with Zoey anymore due to her jealousy. Chase dumps her because his friendship with Zoey is more important than some sleazy hag. These episodes were really entertaining, and we enjoyed how the show decided to have a mini arc take place between 2 episodes. Another great episode which ended up ranking the highest of all the show's episodes is The Curse of PCA. This is another special revolving around the group trying to prove a myth of a PCA student, Charles Galloway, going insane and running up to a place called Redstone Gulch where he passed away. They found his resting place by uncovering his keychain. Everyone decides to bury the keychain as they found it, except for Logan. He wants to show the world that they found the truth by providing proof via the keychain. He hides the keychain in Zoey's backpack and chaos ensues, with the ghost of Charles haunting Zoey and the gang for defiling his resting place. It's absolutely ridiculous, but it really is an entertaining episode. Going off campus isn't something that happens often, and it was a nice change of pace. The jokes were pretty funny here, and Michael's actor really stole the show. He was full of energy in every scene he was in. We gave this episode a 9 out of 10 overall, which is the only 9 we gave to any episode in Zoey 101. Chase's grandma is one of the more emotional episodes in the series. It's about Chase stressing out over a 5,000 word essay. However, his birthday is coming up over the weekend. Zoey wants to do something special for him, so she decides to throw a surprise party. After finding out that Chase's grandmother also has her birthday the same day as Chase, she calls her up and invites her to the party, which she agrees to. However, right before Chase's birthday, she comes down with the flu and isn't able to come. Zoe is understandably upset and lets Chase know. Either way, the party is still on, but Chase also found out about it from Logan, who accidentally included Chase in a group email about the party. Zoey and Chase head over to the party, which is pajama themed, and Chase acts surprised. He heads out to put his PJs on, along with Zoey doing the same. When Zoey returns, she can't find Chase. She sees Michael by the Blix machine looking a bit upset. She starts grilling Michael about Chase's whereabouts, getting angry thinking he went to work on the paper some more. Michael calms her down and tells her that Chase's grandmother passed away that night. Zoey goes to look for Chase, and finds him sitting in the rain. She asks him if he wants to be alone, and he shakes his head. She sits close to him and he begins to cry on her shoulder as a song called A Million Raindrops plays, which is Chase and his grandmother's favorite song. It's a bit on the nose, but it's still an incredibly emotional scene that handles the idea of losing a loved one very maturely. It's a very fantastic episode that made me tear up a little. Another moment that really only has a chance to shine in a show like this, especially with the absence of those stupid laugh tracks. Ending off the season is another special titled Goodbye Zoey. This one revolves around Zoey's parents visiting Zoey and Dustin to let them know that they need to live in England for a few years, and were wondering if Zoey and Dustin wanted to come with them. Dustin immediately declines in his pursuit of achieving a Minecraft girlfriend, while Zoey's a little intrigued by the idea. She talks to her friends about it and they are a bit split on what they think she should do, so she decides to leave the decision up to Chase, who isn't present at the moment. Stacy overhears this conversation and ruins literally everything about the show from here on out until the finale of season 4. And this isn't an exaggeration either. She tells the school's news reporter about Zoey going to an English boarding school, which somehow prompts the entire school to know about Zoey's leave. Literally everyone knows except Chase, who ends up hearing about her decision from multiple different people. This prompts Chase to become pretty angry at Zoey because he thinks she purposefully withheld this information when in reality she just wanted Chase's input. But Stacy had to spread fake news about Zoey. When Zoey goes to talk about this with Chase, he becomes very apathetic due to his anger and basically tells Zoey that she should go to the new boarding school. Zoey leaves confused and decides to go to England. There's a pretty emotional goodbye scene and Zoey takes off, without Chase even saying goodbye to her. Michael looks around for Chase and finds him practicing his volleyball. He asks him what the hell is wrong with him and talks some sense into him. He explains that Zoey would have never left if Chase said don't go. Chase realizes he was acting like a damn fool and tries to call Zoey, who was already on the plane on her way to England. Once Zoey's in England, the two have an awkward conversation over a video call where he explains what happened. There's a lot more that happens with Chase trying to get close with a girl who looks very similar to Zoey. He's doing the Kanye method, it seems. Eventually, Logan and Michael talk some sense into Chase, who admits his love for Zoey, who was listening because they accidentally left the webcam on, and Zoey overheard their conversation. This episode is both well written and poorly written at the same time. The way they handled Chase and his actions was genuinely realistic, especially with how he acted very apathetic after hearing about Zoey leaving. This is also paired up well with how Chase latched onto a girl who looks like a Dollar General version of Zoey. The poorly written part comes with everything revolving around Zoey. For whatever reason, the whole school seems to care about Zoey leaving, and somehow everyone finds out except Chase until literally the last minute. This catastrophic breakdown in communication is a problem that seems to happen a few times this season, where the characters conveniently forget that they have cell phones. This was a problem in the radio episode, in which the same communication error happened beat for beat. Another thing is Zoey going to England at all. I understand she was somewhat interested, but she never tries to understand what made Chase passive-aggressive in the first place. She just decides, okay, I guess he wants me to go, and that's it. This is weirdly out of character for her, because there have been multiple other moments throughout the show where she notices a character is upset, and she would usually sit down and be like, okay, what's up? But in a very serious situation like this, where it's her literal best friend, she just walks away and never tries again after this. I'm making it sound like this situation is Zoey's fault. Chase shouldn't have been a dick for 5 minutes and let Zoey explain herself a bit more. He made the literal same mistake as the radio episode. I understand that this is something that's probably happened to a lot of us, but seeing how Chase didn't learn from the radio episode made the scene feel really annoying and sort of forced for plot. Overall, this finale is a decent one, but this is where the show begins to take a nosedive in terms of quality. This season was a great one overall, and was definitely our favorite. We give this season 7 communication failures out of 10.
How is a rock in a sock a weapon?
Why don't you close your eyes and I'll show you?
Season 4 is not that good. The biggest reason is due to the departure of Chase. The reason for this is because the actor who plays Chase, Sean Flynn, wanted to focus on school during the year they shot the season. This is a decision he would regret, unfortunately. The way they go about writing Chase off for the season is an okay one. Zoey comes back to PCA and Chase goes to England to be with her. They find out that they both swap schools and Chase isn't able to return because he begged his parents to go to the school in the first place, and he needs to stay there for at least a semester. They realize their mistake and try to date long distance, but it doesn't work out, so they decide to wait until they're together again.
Our first official date.
You are not wanted here!
I'm on a date.
It's all your fault!
This is a fine way of writing him off, however the main problem from the third season is only exacerbated here. If they just told each other what they were planning on doing, this wouldn't have happened at all. These characters have the communication skills of napkins. I understand that the writers needed a way to get them to be separated for Chase's actor's sake, but come on. This wouldn't have been a problem if it was literally anybody else in the group besides Michael. The one character that was incredibly interesting was written off, only to be replaced by a soulless husk of a human known as James. James is introduced in the 4th episode in the season titled Rumor of Love, where there's a rumor started by Logan that Zoey and James are dating, which they end up doing at the end of the episode, so everything before that is meaningless, I guess. James is really boring, and I think the writers realize that because compared to Chase, he's barely in the season, and rightfully so, because he really does suck. I don't blame the actor who plays James, Austin Butler, that much because it feels like the writers knew that they couldn't beat Chase, so they just threw a new member into the group without much thought. It also sucks because Chase has been wanting to date Zoey for so long, and this new guy shows up and immediately they're dating. This is a bigger issue with the season feeling rushed overall, which it apparently was, because everything was planned out before Chase's actor decided to not be in the season, so everything needed to be changed last minute. Every single season of the show has a character removed and usually replaced. It feels like the show was in a sort of development hell, considering how many people came and went throughout the 4 seasons. The bad in this season is still similar to what was bad in season 3. Coco is still gross and annoying and given way too much screen time. Many B-plots are completely random and meaningless half the time compared to season 3, where the B-plots are usually connected to the main plots. These issues make the season much less enjoyable than the previous 2 seasons. Chase's absence is felt severely as Logan and Michael, and especially Michael, need to pick up the slack left by Chase's leaving. There aren't many good moments throughout the season. Honestly, the only real interesting episodes were the coffee cart episode, the Alona PCA episode, the walkathon episode, and the season finale, Chasing Zoey. Coffee cart revolves around an accident occurring with the dean's wife involving a coffee cart hitting her and the dean banning coffee on campus. Logan decides to sell coffee at a massive price hike in their dorm, since no one can get their fix anywhere on campus. The girls are upset by this, so they create their own coffee shop in their dorm with much more reasonable prices. Logan hears about this after losing all his customers, so he tells the dean, and the girls manage to hide the fact that they ever had a coffee shop in the first place. This leads to Logan gaining his customers back and the girls fucking with his business by shooting ionizing radiation at the coffee cups and Logan himself. The dean finds out about both of their businesses and is incredibly upset until it's revealed that he's been making coffee in his office, thus ending the ban on coffee. A decent episode premise with a fun turn of events. It's still not as good as it probably could have been if Chase was still in the cast, but it's alright. Alona PCA is about the gang not being able to go anywhere during semester break due to our favorite character, Coco, breaking down over her boyfriend cheating on her. Thankfully, she dips from the school and from this episode entirely. The gang do their best to have fun on a completely empty campus. This turns for the worse when Michael and Logan are accused of smashing the dean's golf trophy. They claim they didn't do it. Logan says that the dean can look at his hockey stick and see there isn't any noticeable damage. However, Michael's hockey stick has conveniently vanished. The boys are put under dorm arrest until the board can make a decision on if they should expel Michael and Logan. The girls end up figuring out where the hockey stick is and who bludgeoned in the trophy. Turns out, one of the janitors did it because he was envious of the dean's golfing ability, because they went to PCA together many years ago. This ends with the dean and the janitor fighting for way too long until they become friends again at the end of the episode. Again, a decent episode overall, but at this point we just really miss Chase. The walkathon is an episode I don't care to give a synopsis on, however it was entertaining because of the mob-like members in this episode. They made the episode a lot more fun and intriguing in what would have been an otherwise bland premise. Now we must mention the best episode in the season by far. Chasing Zoey. This is the final special of the show and technically the finale of Zoey 101. There is one more episode after this, but it's only a recap of everything that's happened in the show so far. We honestly didn't feel like watching it because it didn't add anything new to the season. Chasing Zoey is a beefy episode, so I'll just go over the important stuff. Firstly, Logan and Quinn are dating. They started dating a few episodes prior because Mark, Quinn's previous boyfriend, broke up with her to be with some slag. Logan swooped in and they ended up liking each other. Problem is, they are too embarrassed to be dating one another, so they try to keep it a secret. Prom is coming up, but they don't want to be seen together, so they decide to pick each other's dates to prom. Quinn picks Stacy, and Logan picks Dustin. Michael was given a new car by his father, but it's a stick shift. He doesn't know how to drive a stick and wants to learn to be able to drive his date to the prom. He meets a man who claims he's a lower class teacher and is able to teach Michael how to drive a stick shift. In a myriad of events that feel straight from Karate Kid, which I think was the point, Michael learns how to drive a stick shift. He tries to convince his girlfriend that his teacher is real, but she isn't buying it. Eventually, he sees the teacher on the back of a bull. He asks the teacher to explain to his friends that he is in fact real, but the teacher says he cannot because he doesn't exist. To be frank, what the fuck? The final plot point is the most important one. It involves Zoey feeling strange after James gives her a necklace that says I love you. She is having conflicting feelings because she is still in love with Chase. However, she doesn't know that this is the issue, and this leads to her avoiding James for a few days. He meets up with her in her dorm and drops the "so do you want to break up" line. After a bit of conversating, they call the relationship quits, and James is immediately eaten by multiple beasts from beyond the veil. AKA, he isn't in the show anymore. He left the show the way he arrived, unintended and unwanted. Zoe doesn't want to go to the prom and walks around campus for a bit. She gets a call from an unknown number. She picks it up and it's our boy Chase. They have a short little conversation until Chase tells Zoe to turn around.
Hey, Zoe! Ah! Hearing everything.
Look, I wanted to tell you, but I was embarrassed.
You should be embarrassed. I mean, Logan?
I know, but he's taught me so much.
Oh, God.
It's true. I mean, he really knows his stuff.
Oh! Oh! Ugh! Oh, God.
Wow, he's really upset you're tutoring me.
I guess it was just a complete typo. I'm always mixing up my S's and L's. Like, one time, I tried to write sassafras. I wrote Lalafrau.
She sees him sitting on a rooftop all sly and shit until he falls down and hurts his arm. Zoe runs over to make sure he's okay, and they end up kissing. Finally, it only took 4 seasons. They head to the prom together. Everyone is eventually together again as Michael and Lola are incredibly excited to see Chase again. This one sequence with Michael seeing Chase has more chemistry than all of James's scenes combined. The episode ends with Zoe inviting Chase with her to Hawaii for summer break, and everyone dancing the night away. I wish there was a proper graduation scene, but this is good enough as it shows the characters are all happy together. Again, there is one more episode after this, but it's just a big recap, so I don't consider it a finale at all. There is a big thing we should mention about this ending, and it's the rumor that the show ended because Jamie Lynn Spears was pregnant and they had to end the show because of it. While I believed this when I was younger, I learned while researching this video that that wasn't true at all. I think the showrunners felt it was a good time to end the show, and that's it. The cast and crew didn't even know Jamie Lynn Spears was pregnant until 2 months after the show wrapped up. I'm only mentioning this because people still blame Jamie Lynn Spears for the show ending, even after all these years, which is unfair as at the very least, the show had an ending in the first place. Shows like Drake and Josh and Victorious didn't even have a proper send-off. Those shows just ended. This show was one of my favorites growing up. I always wished I could attend PCA when I was a kid and would watch the show all the time when it was still airing. After watching it again being much older, I realized there are a lot of issues here, but even with all those issues, we still had a blast watching through it again. It is far from a perfect show, but as a staple in a lot of Gen Z lives, it held up pretty well. Overall, we gave the show a 6.5 out of 10 on the Schneider meter. Not bad at all. In terms of weird feet scenes, there were only about 7, which sounds like a lot, but the show had one of the lower amounts of weird feet scenes. As we watch Schneider's later works, that number will increase drastically. Thanks for watching.
Can I have a large Dr. Pepper?
No.